Hello, sisters, and welcome to Go Solo Live. This is Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel. It's time to sit back and grab a cup of coffee and enjoy my conversation with Leah Walker as she shares her story of how she went from being a teacher in Texas to living in Paris, France.
Welcome to Go Solo Live.
Don't you mean Go Solo Live? Have you ever been asked, why on earth would you travel alone? Go Solo Live not only answers that question, but celebrates life as a midlife solo traveler. This is a safe place for women to come together to reminisce about their travels, encourage others to travel, and to dig into the real lessons learned from these journeys. Now join Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel as she and her guests share stories of the solo travelers of midlife women.
Joining us today, we have Leah Walker, and she is live from Paris. Welcome, Leah.
Bonsoir.
And you're actually an American living in Paris, and not just American, a Texan living in Paris, yes?
Yes, that's right. There's a difference there, and any good Texan knows the difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so do people still tease you about an accent?
Actually, the Europeans, they say, well, you don't sound like you're from Texas. You don't eat your words. And I guess living here the last 3 years, I've tried to enunciate, especially when I'm speaking to people who English is not their first language. But when Europeans say that around Americans, they laugh because they clearly can hear the accent. But it has toned down. But whenever I get home to my family, it really comes out. Yeah.
That's pretty funny. Yes, it's a selective accent then.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and after a few glasses of wine, it tends to make an appearance as well.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's get started then on your journey. And what inspired you when you were coming into this emerging solo traveler role? What inspired you to get up and get going?
Well, my second trip abroad was to Costa Rica in 1997, and I was studying abroad. It was the last bit of courses that I had before graduation. So originally, I was forced into this solo travel. I was 21, and I just needed to finish school, and this was the quickest way to do it. So I found that it was scary. I was going to a place that I didn't know the language, really. And this was Costa Rica before ecotourism took over. I mean, if you didn't speak Spanish, you weren't communicating. This was not the tourism, Four Seasons resort and golf courses Costa Rica. This was like old school Costa Rica. I mean,
raw and real.
Yeah, I mean, we got some of my classmates and I got chased out of a swimming pool with a guy with a machete. I mean, I don't think that happens anymore in Costa Rica, but it happened in 1997. So
that is incredible.
Yeah, well, that was interesting, but yeah, and after that, it was a long time before I really traveled. I started teaching, and I was an high school English teacher for 10 years. So although I had a bit of vacation, I didn't have much money. So travel didn't really come until later in my life, I guess maybe 30.
And so what kicked it off at that point?
The travel bug really bit. A friend of mine was getting married in England. She's English. And so I was invited to the wedding, and I took my mother and we went to Scotland and England. And I kind of thought, well, this is really fun. I really like this. And I was certainly curious, and going to, Edinburgh and London, home of great writers. And these were the places I was teaching, or these men were from the places. And I was just really intrigued. And Well, my ex-husband, he was in oil and gas, and so he was traveling quite a bit too. So after I quit teaching, I was able to go for a month or 6 weeks to wherever he was going, and I was basically alone except for at night. So that sort of again pushed the envelope for my love of travel. And then eventually, I just thought, well, I don't want to sit around and wait for somebody else to be able to coordinate their schedule. And, I didn't have kids. My husband was off, ex-husband was off working. And I thought, well, life's too short.
Like,
I'm
why
gonna get
not?
going on this. Yeah. I mean, but I've always been that way. I don't wait around. If I want to go to a movie or I want to go eat at a restaurant, I go by myself. I don't need anybody else. I kind of think you're your own best company.
So that actually is an important step in this. For some people, the idea of solo travel seems so weird because they don't go to dinner by themselves, or they don't, go to the movies by themselves. I actually was just working on a project right now about a whole list of things that you can do, solo travels, baby steps in your own backyard. And, gaining that confidence to feel very comfortable just hanging out by yourself and not worrying about who's looking at me funny is an important first step. So that was really never an issue for you.
No, I don't think so. I don't ever remember it being, I'm sure that it was maybe awkward at first, but I've always been, I can talk, I can be in a crowd or I can be by myself. So I don't, maybe it was awkward, but I don't think it ever was. I can't remember a time that it ever was awkward.
Well, and if it doesn't stand out to you, then that kind of illustrates that there was no moment where you were like, what just happened? Nobody said anything that really stuck with you, because the voices in our head sometimes come from ourselves and sometimes come from others as well.
That's true.
Excellent. So at 30, the travel bug is bitten. So what are the steps that you're taking? You're working, you're teaching.
Yeah, I was teaching English and coaching basketball. And then I decided, well, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. Both my parents were educators, so I knew that given the retirement system, once you put so many years in, well, you're kind of stuck because you might as well finish it out. And also, once you get to a certain age, you're competing for those entry-level jobs with people who just got out of university. And so, I'm 30 competing against 22-year-olds. I have a certain lifestyle I'm accustomed to.
Exactly.
And I'm not willing to take the pay rate that they are. So I just thought, okay, I've got to do something else. I got to figure it out. So I went and started working for the Houston Rockets and the Houston Comets in sales and marketing.
You just landed that job after, your career is in teaching and teaching English specifically. And you're like, oh, let's just go work for the Rockets.
Well, now I played basketball in university, and I was also a basketball coach.
Perfect.
So I was at a high level. I taught I coached 2 All-Americans. And so it was, I wasn't just like coaching a kid's basketball. This was
serious basketball.
Yeah, like a Naismith Player of the Year. So I was at the high level, but I was not coaching in the NBA. I was selling tickets and marketing, so it's a little different. But the common thread was the basketball. So while I was working there, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, and I was fortunately, through the help of my ex-husband, is that I was able to quit working. So for 3 years, I stopped working and more or less took care of my mom, and was able to travel with my ex-husband as he was working. So that was really the time where, I was talking about, I was going with him, and he was in Singapore, and he was in China and Brazil and Korea and all these, places that maybe you wouldn't go on vacation, but maybe you would. I don't know, but certainly not to the shipyards where the oil rigs are being built. But
Sure.
I was like, I'll go anywhere as long as it's new and different. This is cool. So and then I was taking care of my mom as well. So spending time with her.
That's an amazing blessing to be able to do all of that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It all of that absolutely transformed my life. Not only just the travel, but my mom being diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and um, at that point, I found out that I was a carrier of the BRCA2 gene, which most people know. Angelina Jolie has sort of put a face to that.
Sure.
Although I knew about it. I knew it ran in my family when I was 25, but my mother refused to be tested. And because she refused, I said, well, I won't be tested, because if I were tested and positive, then she would know
Right.
that she was positive. So unfortunately, she didn't get tested, and it could have been prevented. So that was a tough decision, but
Absolutely.
it did change my life, because it made me, everybody says, oh, life is short, you only live once, and all this sort of stuff. But seeing your mother with all these plans, and being diagnosed at 60 and then dying at 65, and then you have the same genetic code that makes you predisposed for the same outcome. You just say, well, let's get going. Life really is short.
It's a kick
So
in the pants like none other, that's for sure.
yeah, and that really, really stimulated. It was almost like I probably was running from something. I mean, I was just travel, 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 and I think part of that was trying to heal, trying to get away from the pain, trying to immerse myself in something else, and also just trying to make the most out of every experience, every moment, everything. I just wanted to experience everything. I still do. Well, not everything, but there's some things I could be okay without doing, but
It's
for the most
understandable.
part.
So, I mean, that type of experience is very much a catalyst. And to some degree, my own solo travel started after having lost my mom when I was 30 and then lost my dad when I was 40. And I started to, at that point, figure out, well, now I get to go figure things out for myself, and use solo travel as a means of healing for sure, but not necessarily having that same connection that you did to my own mortality in that process. So you started just racking up this whole solo travel experience. What were you looking for when you were making your decisions about where to go, and where did you start when you were at that point?
Um, well, I would say, well, after my mom died, I actually went back to work, and I was working for the world's leading producer of oil field equipment, and I was writing software user manuals for offshore oil rigs, and it's just as exciting as it sounds.
But somebody's got to do it.
I did it, and I was really good at it. I was so good that I got through my work so fast, and I was bored, and I started a website. And that's really when apparently it was read, and it got awards, and I got opportunities. And so at first, it was Europe. I won a trip. I won a month-long trip to Europe. And it was 30 days, and I could choose, I don't know, from 10 different cities, and I could stay like 10 days in one and 3 days in another. And, I could piece it however I wanted. And man, I said, I love Europe. I love everything about Europe. this is the most amazing place. I want to see every inch of this. I mean, it was that. So Europe really just spearheaded me, and it just, because I'd taken my mom, so in a way that was special.
Absolutely.
So that was both of our first trip to the old continent. But yeah, this is I returned, and I just said, my goodness, this place is special. I could not get over the diversity that, you just literally step across a border, and the language and the food and the culture and the mannerisms and everything just changes. And even within the same country, you could just, go from north to south by train by an hour. And like in Switzerland, it's from French to Swiss German. And what is Swiss German anyway? I didn't even know that was a language. Is that German but Swiss? It was just, there was so much. I was overstimulated.
That is amazing. So, and how did you win a 30-day trip to Europe?
It was a writing competition. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I wrote an essay, and I was the winner. So that really, that was also one of the pivotal points in my solo travel, because through that opportunity, it just led to so many other opportunities and more and more travel. That was really what opened the floodgates.
I would say, and what validation for some of the work that you've been doing as well, and, starting your website and things like that. So to have the validation of award-winning writing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's, I say to people, I'm not a blogger, I'm not a journalist. I'm a writer at the core. And I take pictures. I would never call myself a photographer, because just because you carry a camera and click a button does not make you a photographer. I've gotten some good shots, but I've deleted a lot of really bad ones. And I think that's the same way with writing. And there's lots of blogs out there, and anybody can write, but not everybody can write well. I'm not Ernest Hemingway, but I'm not the worst either.
Absolutely. So now you're at the point where you have, rediscovered Europe. You've reinvigorated your love for it. So where did that take you next? You were no longer teaching. You had, your job had expanded, but did you still have work that you were planning to come back to the U.S. to do, or were you now full-time adventuring?
Yeah, I after that trip, I came back in early December, and I worked for a couple of months, and my ex-husband said, look, you're really good at this. You're passionate about this. You don't need to have this job. Why don't you give it a try? And he was, from the beginning, he was such a big cheerleader. He still is. He's a big cheerleader for me. And, I couldn't be where I am today without his support and his help. So, I'm very grateful for that. And although we've gone our separate ways, he was a big part of what got me to travel as well. So I can't discount that.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Okay. So then what came next?
So I quit my job because I was getting a lot of opportunities, and you only get, I was lucky to get 3 weeks vacation time, and that just wasn't enough to be going back. And I think one time I went to Switzerland to go skiing for 4 days. I mean, like 2 days travel, 2 days in Switzerland. So, and I wasn't flying from the East Coast. I was flying from Texas. That was a little crazy, but I wanted to ski the Alps. I'd never skied the Alps, and that was a lifelong something I wanted to do, and I had the opportunity, so I did it. And I was back at work, but yeah, I did wind up quitting the job and just starting to pursue these other things. And just mainly traveling in Europe and trying to get something going. It's not easy. I mean, I wish there's all these blogs out there, how to quit your job and travel the world and, all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, It is not easy unless you are on a trust fund or you have somebody, foot in the bill, because you can't just. I mean, I guess if you're a college backpacker and you're staying in hostels, it's a little easier. But I'm 43 years old now. I'm not staying in a hostel.
That's not the lifestyle that you're going for at this point.
No.
Right.
No.
So part of your brand is that you don't stay in a hostel, right?
Right. Well, my dad, he's only half kidding, but my dad always says it's just as easy to fall in love with a rich guy as it is a poor guy. So, I kind of took that philosophy and said, well, it's just, if I'm going to write an article, it's just as easy to write about a 5-star palace hotel as it is as a hostel. So why not, and my audience skews older, college educated, professional. So why would I write about, I need to write about the things the places that they want to go. So
exactly.
Yeah, that was my dad's Play-Go. Oh my Lord.
Isn't that great though, how they echo in your brain even after all those years?
Oh, yeah. He'll listen to that and just shake his head.
But it's real. It's a very real statement.
Yeah, he was teasing, of course.
What made you, finally decide that you were going to stay in Paris?
Well, I kept on that month that I won. I penciled in 10 days in Paris. I'd never been to Paris. I really had no desire to go to Paris. It wasn't this, affair, infatuation with Paris, like so many people have. I just said, well, I can't go to Europe and not go to Paris. So
got it.
I figured, and as soon as I got there, I said, oh my God, I get the hype. I know what this is all about. And I didn't want to leave. I did not want to leave. This trip, these 10 days were magnificent. I mean, I was approached at the Georgia Sunk, the Four Seasons Georgia Sunk,
yes,
by Lionel Richie, and invited to dinner. So I'm going out on my first trip to Paris, and Lionel Richie invites me to dinner at an Alain Ducasse restaurant. And I just said, my God, if Paris is like this, I'm never leaving. This is magic, right?
How does that even happen? How is that real? That is amazing.
I don't know. I've written about it. I wrote part 1 and 2 on my blog. And what's really funny is we kept in touch. He was such a nice guy, so down to earth. We kept in touch for several years. And he was performing in Austin a few years ago, and I texted him and I said, hey, I'm coming to Austin to see you perform. And he said, oh, get in touch with his manager. And he said, I want you to show me Austin, invite your friends, we'll go to dinner, we'll hang out. And I said, okay. So we did. We have a friend that owns a restaurant, and he closed the restaurant for us, and we had a big party, and yeah, it was it was fun.
That is quite a story.
Yeah, so I thought, well, my gosh, Paris is magic. I mean, that was just one of the things that happened on that trip. But every time I would, after I left, after that trip, if I was going to Austria or Spain or anytime I was touching foot on the continent, I was always flying in or out of Charles de Gaulle, because I wanted to spend time in Paris. And the more I came, the harder it was to leave. And, every time I'm on the airplane, I'm crying because I don't want to leave. And
absolutely,
when I get home, I'm in a depression. And it's really strange because it felt like home. It felt like home. I didn't understand what anybody was saying. I still don't half the time, more than half. I can't explain it. It's like I've written a story that says I'm an American with a French heart. I mean, I really think, I don't know, something about it. It's just, it feels like home.
That is awesome. And you're not the only one that I know who is like that. So that is fantastic.
Yeah.
I have a friend who leads groups to Paris, and she's lived there for several years and, is raising her family back in the US, but her 10-year-old son even knows, mommy, you belong in Paris.
Yeah, it's something that just seeps into your soul. And I think that, there's other places. I think that when people try to get me to explain it, it's difficult. And unless you have had a place speak to you in such a way, I mean, it doesn't have to be Paris. It could be Des Moines, Iowa, or Rome or Santiago, or it could be any place, but it's some place that just shakes you to the core and
Yep.
just wraps its arms around you and doesn't want to let you go. And until you've had that feeling, you can't understand.
That's fair. I agree. I know for me, New Zealand is like a home for me, and every single chance I get to go back there, I will.
Yeah, that's the one place that I will return to one day.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Now, so you've settled in Paris. You've been there for how many years?
Approaching 3 years.
Okay.
Approaching 3 years.
But you've really kind of specialized in that, because one of the things on our pre-podcast interview, you mentioned that you're really not just traveling for the sake of travel anymore. So tell me how that's evolved for you.
Well, because it has to be something really special to get me out of France, because I feel like France is so dense between the regions and so different that I could spend a lifetime just focused on France, and whether it's the food or the pastries, or the drink. You could do a lifetime studying French wine alone. It's like, it would take, I think I wrote an article that it would take, if you drank one bottle of wine, a different wine every night for 8 years, that's how long it would take for you to try every French wine.
That is amazing. I'd like to say challenge accepted, but I don't have that beautiful of a wine, a palate for good wine. So I would let somebody else take that challenge, but that sounds like an amazing opportunity.
Yeah. And so, and even just in Paris, I can walk down a different street and discover something new. And there's so many layers of history here that I think I've always thought I would rather do one thing really well than a lot of things average.
Got it.
So I want to focus on France. And so I love Austria, and I really love Austria. Italy's amazing. Spain's awesome. I love the UK. I can understand what they're saying most of the time, unless I'm in Scotland. But France, there's just something about it. The cheeses as well, my God. But the fact that the food and drink are so reflective of the history and the culture. And I'm such a history buff that I just love to dig and dig and dig and discover new things. And it's limitless in France. I don't think there's enough room in my brain to even fit half of this stuff.
I'd say that's a good place to be. So what is your lifestyle looking like right now in France? Because you've created your niche, you've created a business and a specialty here. What does your life look like?
Ooh, well, it's not as glamorous day to day. If you could see me now, I think I told you that I was raking the yard and I was cleaning out the storage shed earlier. So I'm not looking like I'm not going to the Shangri-La tonight for drinks. So my day-to-day life is, I'm a social media manager for a company here in Paris that rents high-end apartments and also does concierge service, tour service, and things like that. It's a really awesome company. So I manage their social media. So that's one thing I do. Another thing is I work as an ambassador for brands. So, I just did my first deal with MasterCard. I'm their International Priceless Cities ambassador, or not ambassador, influencer. So I don't know if you remember that ad campaign, Priceless, like trip to the ball or 2 tickets
Yes,
to the
of
ball game.
course.
Okay, so that's their Priceless. So they'll send me on these priceless experiences that are reserved for MasterCard users. So anybody with a MasterCard can buy these, and so they send me on these, and I experience it, and then I write about it and take photos, and then they'll be published on the MasterCard site. So that's one thing I do. I do that for brands, like but I also work with the French Tourism Atout France, which is the government's tourism board, and so I'm an ambassador for the wine and the travel. I do a big wine trip every year for Atout France and Visit French Wine, where basically I drink from morning till night, and I taste. Maybe I don't drink.
Understood.
Maybe I just taste. But let's see. So I've done a cognac, which cognac at 10 a.m. is not easy. So yeah, that's not easy at all. Cognac, and then last year I did the Loire Valley, which was incredible. And then this past year in September, I did Burgundy, and Beaune, and that place is ridiculous. I mean, I think it has 8 of the 10 most expensive wines in the world, and maybe like 32 of the top 50. I mean, it's like liquid gold in those mountains. It's it's amazing. It's amazing. I love this area. You have to go, and next, yeah, everybody should go.
I feel like you should have a whole brand that just says like "Live like Lee," right?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess so. But really, I mean, I'm sitting here in my yoga tights.
Right. It's only a small portion of the life, but with that portion, people would let, I mean, my jaws dropped as you're describing some of these experiences. That is incredible. And yet this isn't something that just, fell in your lap. This is something that you have worked towards and, set yourself up to be able to be that person. So some of the people that are in my audience are going to be listening to this saying, so where would I even start if I wanted to create something like this for myself? Where would I even start? What would you recommend?
Do you mean as a career, like how you would?
As a career, or even like a summer jaunt, where they say, like, I want to just go somewhere and not, the full immersion, and even then doing some of the possible work along with that.
Oh, well, now this is 5 years of really struggling. And this is and the writing part, I tell people the writing part, I've been writing, I was an English major. I've been writing. I didn't just pick up a pen or a computer and start scribbling down my random thoughts,
Absolutely.
That's something that I've trained for, since I learned to write my name. So, I think, but I think that there are people that you don't have to be a great writer to do something. You can be a great photographer, a great videographer, or, there's things that you find your strength. Everybody has your strength. Like I'm stronger in writing and, marketing and creativity, but, my videography is horrible and my photography is average at best. So, it's impossible to be great at everything. So, if you are thinking of trying to develop a brand or develop something, there are other ways to do it. If you're a writer, you can write for other people. It doesn't pay much. Don't quit your day job because especially these days, it's competitive, and with digital media, it just, barely pay your week's grocery bill for one article. So, that's something that you have to be financially stable. You can't be in debt. There's so many things to consider when you're doing that. If you want to do it on your own, you need to pick and choose. I think that experiences are more important than things. So, I used to shop. And then, one day, this is going to sound crazy. One day I was watching Oprah. This is many years ago.
Awesome.
And she said, if it's on your ass, it's not an asset. And I said, wow, that's right.
That's powerful.
And I said, I can only wear one pair of jeans at once. I can only wear one pair of shoes at once. And so I stopped shopping. I stopped keeping up with all my friends, and the money that I would spend on, a new whatever, I put it in an account, and I saved, and I saved, and I saved, and I saved. And in fact, I did this for my niece as well. I had a secret account for 4 years to take her. Yeah, to take her anywhere in the world she wanted to go before she went to college.
That's awesome.
And I was just, I'm not good at keeping secrets. So, but I did. I got her parents' approval, and I kept it really quiet. And I wrote this blog post announcing what I was doing and why. And her mom gave her the iPod, and she read it. And but it didn't turn out to happen because, she'd never left the country. And we were going to the Serengeti. Wow. And I was flying her from Houston through Istanbul. And this was right at the time that the bomb went off and the coup happened.
Okay.
And she and her parents just didn't feel comfortable with her putting herself through the first time through Istanbul. So unfortunately, that trip didn't happen. So, but I went. I went anyway.
Sure.
It was my first time on safari, so I wasn't, planning was already done. But so it's all about your priorities. When people say, "Oh, I wish I could do this. I wish you could that," it drives me crazy. If you wish you were skinny and you wish you were in shape, you change what you eat and you work out. If you want to go on a trip and you want to buy a house, or you want to stop buying stuff you don't need. Absolutely. And prioritize. Now, okay, sometimes people, you barely have enough to feed your family and pay your rent. I get that. But for those people that are have a disposable income and they're disposing it on stuff they don't need, instead of experiences. Yep. I think that you're going to remember a solo trip to Italy that you've dreamed about more than you're going to appreciate that Gucci bag.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. And it's like you said, though, it's all about setting priorities. And, we can wish all that we want, but until we take some action, we're not going to get it.
Yeah, it's true. And I have the same issue with myself. It's like, I want to be more, I want to be able to have this opportunity or that opportunity, or be more successful, or I want to have more visitors to my website, or I want to do this. Well, you can't keep doing the same thing. Something's not working. So you have to figure out another plan and try it, and keep trying it until you figure out what works.
Absolutely. Nope. I think that says a lot. And, again, this is so much more than just you are, you're this American who dreamed about Europe and loved Europe and then ends up in Europe. As you talked about, this is struggle. This is alignment. This is years of experience and years of hard work that has put you in a particular position that you're in right now. And while from the outside, people can look and look at your website and look at all that you're doing in these amazing trips and be a little envious of that opportunity. But it's not that you didn't work for it. It's not that it was just handed to you. And to remember that no matter what our gifts are, when we focus our gifts to achieve the life that we're trying to achieve, that's when the real magic happens.
Right. I would never dream of calling myself or anyone who's accomplished something lucky, because that absolutely diminishes all the work, all the effort, everything that you put into it. Now, if I won the lottery, okay, that's luck.
You bet.
But me living in Paris is not luck. I busted my hump to get a visa. I mean, I literally I had a dossier, 4 inches thick. I just refused to get up until they gave me what I wanted. And, I get to Paris and, I'll make it on social media look like it's all, baguettes and Bordeaux, but that's not the case. It took me a year and a half to get a French bank account. I mean,
right.
It's like some of the things are just absolutely maddening, but that's not interesting, right? But that's not part of the glamorous picture that I'm painting. So, it's still real life. Just because I'm walking on the Seine doesn't mean I don't step in dog poop.
Well, and it's funny because it's really easy for people to look at the end result. And, at one point, as I worked on developing my own story, I would talk about the beginning and the mess, and I'd talk about where I am now and leave that muddy middle. I'd go over it real fast. And somebody once told me, when you think about a movie, they don't speed up over that muddy middle. They slow down, because that's where people can really start to relate to the story. And honestly, I feel like we've uncovered just a portion of your story. We didn't get in even that deep. And I hope that everybody's taking away from this conversation that there is no such thing as luck. It's only the luck that you create for yourself to create the life that you want to have. And if travel is supposed to be a part of that, then that's up to you to do the work to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I've written about it, but I've had struggles. This has been a very difficult 10 years, even though it looks wonderful. 3 years ago, 3 years ago, I had a preventative double mastectomy because of the gene. And that was like, I don't wish that on my worst enemy. And 2 weeks later, I moved to Paris. I couldn't carry more than 15 pounds, but I was going. This was my goal. I was like, okay, I'm going to get this done in the U.S. I'm going to get to France, and I'm going to start anew and with my new perky breasts. But yeah, and so that's my middle. I guess that's kind of my middle is this whole, this underlying health concern and the struggle to, it's like how I describe it is I'm like a caveman. In the caveman days, if you don't hunt, you don't eat.
Yep.
So I'm constantly having to hunt in order to find opportunities, make opportunities. Occasionally things do come into my inbox and I'm like, whoa, that's amazing. But, sometimes you have to make your own opportunities, whether it's in business, it's in travel, it's, in anything you do. You can't just sit around waiting for life to happen, because before you know it, it's going to be gone.
Well, on that note, let's make sure that we know where people can connect with you and find you, Leah.
Okay. My website is leahtravels.com, and Instagram and Facebook is Leah Travels. And you can find me on Twitter. I don't love Twitter, but one thing I'm also doing, a little sneak peek, is I'm starting an entertainment company with 2 LA-based producers, Emmy-winning. They've produced for ABC, CBS, Travel Channel, Discovery Channel. They're amazing. And we are starting to shoot our new content in December. And I'm so excited about this part. I did a project with CNN last year a TV advertorial. So I kind of got the TV bug from CNN last year, and I've been wanting to do video, and I've been wanting to do TV for a while, but I just thought, that's another skill set. I just don't know if I can do that. But yeah. So anyway, that's coming soon. That's coming soon.
That is awesome. Well, I'm so excited. That information will be provided in our show notes so people can connect with you. And I definitely appreciate that you have taken the time to share your story with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Wasn't it great to hear the stories that Leah shared with us today? It really strikes me how little luck has to do with where we end up. It's about hard work, persistence, and determination. Just put your mind to it and you can do it. So if you love these stories and want to help support Go Solo Live, you can do that by making a small financial contribution to the show. There are lots of options with some great gifts of appreciation. Just go to www.patreon.com/GoSoloLive to show your love. That's patreon.com. And we've reached the end of another episode, but the conversation doesn't have to end there. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Go Solo Live. Until next time, remember, go solo, not alone.